Hey everybody, this is Russ from Retro Game Core. Today I want to show you how to set up streaming on your favorite handheld. Now there are many different ways you could do that. The first would be using cloud streaming, so you could use a service like NVIDIA GeForce Now or Xbox Cloud Gaming. But today what we're going to focus on is doing local or remote play just within your own home. So if you've got a PC and you want to stream a game from that computer over to your handheld, this is the guide for you. And I'll try to cover all your bases here, including your host PC, which can be running either Windows or Linux, but then also your client device, be that a phone or a tablet or a handheld. And once it's all set up, it's one of my favorite ways to play games at home because I can relax on the couch, but then play something that's a bit more demanding on a handheld that usually wouldn't be able to play it natively. We got a lot of ground to cover, so without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, as we get started, let's talk about some pros and cons of handheld streaming and why you may or may not want to set this up. Let's start with the pros, and number one, this can really enhance your portable gaming experience. Most people will buy a handheld to play games directly on it, like through emulation, but the ability to stream PC games just expands that even more. It also can reduce the overall power needed to play your games in the first place. For example, on your host PC, it will usually not require as much power as if you were playing it on a big monitor. So because these handheld screens are much smaller and have a lower resolution like 1080p, that means your PC doesn't have to work as hard in order to get the game running. At the same time, playing the game on your handheld will usually require less power too, because none of the processing is happening on the device itself, it's happening on that PC, and so this can help you with battery life as well. And so these together can sometimes form a symbiotic experience where your PC doesn't have to work as hard to play the game at 1080p, but it still looks great on a small handheld, which you can then play in the comfort of wherever you want within your home. Now, streaming to a handheld is not a perfect experience, and it does have some additional requirements. The first is that you need a PC to stream from in the first place. So right off the bat, if you don't have a PC of your own to stream from, then you're going to want to look into cloud gaming, things like GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud Gaming, like I mentioned in the intro of this video. The streaming experience also depends on your home network configuration. If you're using an old router or maybe an older bandwidth, then this might not be a very good experience. And it should also go without saying, but there's a potential for latency when streaming to a handheld device. After all, it's being projected from one PC over to your handheld, and there are all sorts of things that could go wrong with a setup like this. The number one thing you can do to prevent this latency would be to have a wired connection for your host PC. So plug this in directly into your router via Ethernet. Now, there are a ton of different apps that can be used for streaming, but we're going to focus on two each for your host PC as well as your client device. Let's start with our host PC and the Sunshine app. Now, initially, this was meant to be a multi-client solution for another app that was already out called NVIDIA Game Stream. The NVIDIA app, as you may expect, only worked with NVIDIA GPUs, and Sunshine was the alternative that allowed you to use other graphics cards. Now, since then, the NVIDIA Game Stream app is no longer being supported, but Sunshine is still around. And so this is a more universal app in that it'll work on basically any operating system, Windows, Linux, or Mac, and I will show you how to set this one up, but a little bit later, specifically focusing on Linux. For Windows PCs, I actually recommend Apollo, which is a fork of Sunshine. What I like about this app is that it's super streamlined and has a bunch of additional features that are very easy, including an automatic virtual display. This means that when you're streaming from your PC to your handheld, Apollo takes care of all that dirty work. So it will automatically know your resolution, your aspect ratio, and your frame rate, and then it will push that directly to your handheld while also turning off the display on your PC. So in this video, we're mostly going to focus on setting up Apollo, assuming that you are using a Windows-based PC, but we will also talk about Sunshine on Linux later on. Now, on the client side, we also have two options. The first is Moonlight, which is the client app for Sunshine. And like with Sunshine, Moonlight is everywhere. You can find it on any of your desktop operating systems, but then also on Android and iOS, and anything that is a TV streamer too, like an Apple TV or your Google TV. All of those will generally have a Moonlight app as well. This means that no matter what device you're using, a phone, a tablet, your TV, or of course a handheld, all of this will have a Moonlight app that you can stream to. Now, when playing on an Android device, I prefer to use an app called Artemis. This one is also a fork of Moonlight and made by the same developer of Apollo. And like with Apollo, this one has been streamlined and I find it to be very handy. And so that's what we're going to focus on with our setup here today, where we're going to have Apollo on our Windows PC and then Artemis on our Android device. The great thing about all these apps is that they are interchangeable. You can use either one for your host and either one for your client. So if you're using Apollo on your Windows PC, you could use either Artemis on your Android device or Moonlight on something else, and it's all going to work fine. But long story short, I'm going to show you how to set up all 4 of these apps here today with a focus on Apollo and Artemis. Now, beyond just the 4 apps we're going to focus on today, there are other apps that you can use. For example, there is Steam Link. This one is a very simple setup. You basically will just run Steam on your host PC and then use the Steam Link app on your device. And this will work pretty well. It's one of the more simple setups, but it is quite limited. It only goes up to 1080p and 60 frames per second. And there are some other limitations, like it can only use the aspect ratio of your host PC. Another app that's really interesting is called Duo. This is a streaming app, but the nice thing about it is that the streaming happens in the background, which means that you can still use your PC for other things while someone else is streaming games from it. This one's a bit more advanced in its configuration, and I did a video about it several years ago. I will leave all this info linked down below. And then finally, Razer has its own remote play option within its suite of apps. I made a video about this last year, and I used it for quite some time. It's very similar to Apollo and Artemis in its overall structure. Unfortunately, over time, I ended up uninstalling the software, mostly because I just don't like the Razer software suite. Too many notifications, too many updates. It felt like it was in my face all the time. And so we're going to get a very similar setup with Apollo and Artemis instead. Okay, now let's talk about some of my favorite handhelds to stream to. Let's start with the Odin 3. This is the handheld I've probably been playing the most over the past few months. This one has a 6-inch OLED display that goes up to 120 Hz, makes it a perfect match for streaming. It's also got the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, and when set up for streaming, it has very low decoding times, the lowest I've seen on Android. It's also a very comfortable handheld. It's got these nice ergonomic bumps on the back, which means that I usually will just play it as it is, but if I'm going to be playing something a bit more modern, like a first-person shooter game, there are also ergonomic grips that you can get from their website as well. And the average decoding time with the setup that we're going to do today is under 1 millisecond with the Odin 3. It's to the point where I cannot tell the difference between playing this via streaming or locally. The major drawback of this handheld is its price point. It starts at $340 before shipping because it is top of the line. And so this is a device not really geared for emulation only because of that price tag. Instead, it would be something for like high-end emulation as well as PC gaming on Game Native, and then of course streaming as well. Another Android handheld that I think is awesome for streaming is the Odin 2 Portal. This one's a generation behind the Odin 3, and it has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor. The screen on this is a bit bigger than on the Odin 3. It's 7 inches and also goes up to 120 Hz and a 1080p resolution, so this one is going to be a bit of a larger experience as you're streaming it. And honestly, streaming is the main thing I do with this handheld. I've got these ergonomic grips on it that never come off of it because it just feels perfect like this, and then I've also got third-party sticks that I put on here that are a little bit larger. I'll leave a link to this shop down below, but that combination of larger sticks and then these ergonomic grips make it really excellent for game streaming. And when properly configured, I can get an average decoding time of about 1 millisecond with this one, and so this also feels very good, similar to the Odin 3. And the price on the Odin 2 Portal is not half bad for what you get. It's been going for about $300 retail before shipping, but over the past few months, it's been on sale for $250. So this one also is definitely not the cheapest option when it comes to streaming, but you get a lot out of this handheld, including emulation performance in PC gaming, but I think for streaming in particular, this is where it really shines. Now let's talk about some handhelds that are a little bit cheaper. So let's start with the Mangmi Pocket Max. This one starts at $200 before shipping, but it has a very similar screen to the Odin 2 Portal and similar size. So this one's got an OLED display, 7 inches, 1080p, and up to 144 Hz. It's also got very streaming-minded controls, including some large sticks as well as analog triggers, and so yeah, this one feels pretty good. Not quite as comfortable as the Odin 2 Portal with its grip on, but overall I still think it's a pretty good handheld. This one has the older Snapdragon 865 processor inside. It's going to play well up to like PS2 and GameCube, but the other ones that we were looking at before will do better with high-end emulation. So I consider this one to be a streaming first handheld that can also do a pretty good job at emulation. Now once I've got it all configured, I usually will see a 2.5 to 3.5 millisecond decoding time, time when streaming onto a Snapdragon 865, and that's exactly what I'm seeing here. To me, this still feels very natural and very close to playing it locally. Another Snapdragon 865 handheld that I find to be pretty darn good for streaming is this one, the Retroid Pocket Flip 2, but with an ergonomic grip added to it. The thing that I like about this one is the placement of the analog sticks, which are right up here up top, and so it makes it actually pretty darn good for streaming. And so even though I don't really consider clamshells to be the most ergonomic devices out there, with a grip, this one is actually pretty good. And like with the Mangmi Pocket Max, the decoding time here is usually between 2.5 and 3.5 milliseconds, and I think that's perfectly fine. And so I do find this one to be pretty comfortable. The screen is not the best, it's 5.5 inches, so a little bit small, but it is OLED in 1080p and goes up to 60 Hz. If you're looking for a cheap way to stream, you could also use a Linux-based handheld, and most of these will be under $100, but there's a few caveats here. Number one, most of them will be a 4:3 aspect ratio, and so that may not be a good fit for the games you're trying to play, but there are some widescreen ones like the TrimUI Smart Pro S, which is a pretty good fit. So I'm going to briefly show you how to set up streaming on one of these handhelds using a tool like Portmaster, but for the most part, I would say that Android or a PC handheld are going to be your best fit when it comes to some serious streaming. And then finally, a handheld PC, especially one that's a little bit older and maybe not quite as powerful, can also be an excellent fit for streaming from a different PC. It might seem a little bit unintuitive since these devices can already play PC games natively, but if you stream to them, you're going to be able to play them at a lower power, which means you'll have longer battery life, and often you'll be able to have better graphics if you have a PC that's more powerful than these. And streaming to a handheld PC will usually give me the lowest decoding times compared to anything else that I can stream to. For example, here with the Legion Go S, I'm getting an average of 0.3 milliseconds, so even better than the Odin 3 right here. And so also in this video, I will briefly show you how to set up streaming on a Linux-based handheld like this one or the Steam Deck. And then finally, I do want to also reiterate that the process that we're going to do here for handhelds will also work on other devices like your phone or your tablet or your TV streaming devices. All that's going to work out well. So you don't even need a handheld to do handheld streaming. You could just use your phone with a telescopic controller like this one. Okay, after that very long introduction, we are now ready to actually start installing this stuff and messing around with it. We are going to start with Apollo here on a Windows PC. The main Windows computer that I use at home is the ROG Flow Z13. This is a tablet PC with the Strix Halo chipset. It is super powerful. For the past few months, I've also been using an external graphics card with this tablet PC. This is the XG Mobile from Asus. It has an RTX 5090 inside of it. I like to have a more portable setup where I can just go back and forth between the house and the studio with both this tablet and the external graphics card, so this fits my needs nicely. At the same time, I don't always want to be sitting at my desk when playing a PC game, and so I often will stream from this over to my handheld when I'm at home and relaxing. So here we are on my ROG Flow Z13, and I have now uninstalled everything on this, so we're going to start over from scratch. And it is worth noting, if you've ever tried to use Apollo or Sunshine and you want to go through this guide, the best thing you can do is uninstall all of that before starting over from scratch. So here we are on the Apollo website, which I will have linked down below, and we're going to install the latest version. So we're going to go down to releases, and the latest stable version is 0.46 as of making this video. So I'm going to scroll down here, and then I'm going to grab the exe file to install it. So here on my desktop is the app that I just installed, so I'm going to open it up. And from there, you just want to go through the installation process. Go ahead and hit next and agree to the agreement. And I would recommend using the default installation locations. We're going to hit next here, then next again. And then you want to install all the stuff it recommends, so then hit install. From there, it should just take a minute to go through the installation process, and then we'll be good to go. Once it's done, you can press the finish button. And now down below in the task menu, you should see the Apollo icon right here. You can right click on the app and then select Open Apollo. It'll bring up a browser window, and depending on the browser, it will say that your connection is not private. You can hit advanced and then proceed to localhost. From there, it's going to give you a login page, and this is going to be the credentials that you're going to use to log in every time you need to mess around with Apollo. By default, the username will be Apollo, and you can use whatever password you would like, maybe something simple. From there, you can just hit enter. It's going to say, okay, good to go. It's going to refresh the screen, and now you'll need to add your username and password. So on this page, just go ahead and put the username and password that you just previously used. And once you're in, there's really not a lot that you need to do right here. You can go into the configuration tab and then go through and make adjustments, but I found that the default settings are actually perfectly fine. In the Applications tab, this is one where you can add some things if you would like. For example, if you wanted to have a button that would just launch a specific game, then you could have that set up. Or if you wanted to launch directly into RetroArch and so on, you can have all this added here. By default, it'll have the desktop and Steam Big Picture mode, and for the most part, that's all I usually need. And so really, this is how easy it is to set up Apollo, and like I mentioned, the default settings are going to be fine for the most part. For now, we're actually ready to move over to our client device. And so next, we're going to focus on installing and configuring Artemis, and then getting that to work with Apollo. Okay, so here I am with the tablet PC. I've got Apollo set up like we just did a minute ago. Now let's get Artemis running on a handheld. This is the AYN Odin 2 portal, and I just uninstalled Artemis, so we're going to start over from scratch. There are a couple different ways you can install it. The first would be to just go directly to the GitHub page, or if you followed any of my Android starter guides, I often show how to set up an Obtainium emulation pack, and it'll be part of that package as well. And I'll leave a direct link to this website down below, but once you're here, just go down to releases, and then as I'm making this video, I just use the latest experimental release right here. I scroll down to the assets section, and then I grab the one that says ARM64 on it right here. Just click on that, it's going to download it, and then we can install it. Once it's done downloading, you can tap on it. It'll say, do you really want to install it? We're going to hit yeah, man, I want to do it. Once you have the app installed, you can go ahead and open it up, and it should show you the name of whatever computer is currently running either Apollo or Sunshine. In this example, I've got my ROG Flow Z13, which is this tablet PC right here. Now, before we connect them, I do recommend going into the settings here and adjusting everything to match the resolution of your device. So to start, under video resolution, by default, it'll be 720p, but the screen on the Odin 2 portal is actually 1080p, so I'm going to use that. Same thing with frame rate. By default, it's going to be 60, but this one can actually go up to 120, and so I'm going to pick that one. Next, under bitrate, you have the ability to adjust this to a higher or lower number. By default, it's going to be 28 megabits per second. Now, the higher you go, potentially it's going to have less artifacting, but generally I never go above 40. It's really going to depend on your own network and how that works out. I would try out the default, and if you're still seeing some artifacts, like it looks a little bit compressed, then maybe try bumping it up to 30, 35, and 40, but definitely don't go too high because it can affect your streaming performance overall. For now, we're just going to leave it at the default settings and use that. Now, below that, we're going to have an advanced option, and depending on the chipset that you're using, this may be very helpful. Let's start with video frame pacing. We've got a bunch of options here, and by default, it's going to be prefer lowest latency, but you can see we have two additional options, Warp Drive and Warp Drive 2 experimental, and these might be a little bit buggier, but depending on your device, it might work out pretty well. I know that with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 on this device, that Warp 2 and Warp Drive work pretty well, so I'm going to use Warp 2. If you've got a Snapdragon device, then I would definitely try checking these ones out, and even if you've got something else, maybe try it out and see how it works, but for the most part, prefer lowest latency will also work very well. If we go down a little bit more, there's an option that says ultra low latency experimental. This is only going to be for Snapdragon devices like this one, Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, Gen 3, and Elite devices. So your Odin 2s, your Odin 3s, your Thor, all of that is going to be able to use this check mark. So definitely turn that one on. Further down, there's an option to enable HDR. This requires both the host PC and the device to support it. So not every single setup is going to work, but that's something worth playing around with if you want. Then finally, the only other thing that I really mess with is right here. It says show performance stats while streaming. I like to turn this one on because I can then see how low my decoding time and everything else is. Of course, if you're just going to be streaming and you don't really want to follow the numbers, then you don't want to turn that one on. So at this point, we've made the configurations we need to. We've got Apollo running on my Flow Z13. Now it's time to connect them. So we're going to tap on it, and immediately it's going to show that we have a PIN code to use, 1801. At the same time, on your PC, you might have just missed it, but there was a little notification that said there was an incoming pairing request, and so you could click on that and it's going to take you to the PIN tab on your Windows client. Once you're in the PIN tab, go over to PIN pairing right here, and then this is where you're going to add the PIN, which if you remember is 1801. So I'm going to go ahead and add the PIN right here, and then underneath that you have an optional device name. I'm going to call this Odin 2 Portal. And so there we go. I've got the PIN code as well as the name of the device. I'm going to hit send. From there, it's going to say success, and you will see over here on this one that it'll take you directly to the menu. And this only needs to be done one time. After that, you're going to be able to see the Flow Z13 without a lock on it, so you can just go directly into it. Now, the first time that you set this up, there are a couple additional steps that I recommend doing. So let's go ahead and tap on virtual display. This is now going to connect this, and so you will see it pop up right here. At first, when it's connected, you're actually going to see a duplication of the screen itself. So now we need to go into the Windows settings and change that out. So make sure you're still connected to your computer here. Then you can go in and then right click on the desktop and then go into display settings. Once you're here, by default, you're going to see that it's showing duplicate these displays. What we want to do is change it to say show only on 2. This is going to make the Windows screen only show on this one. It's going to ask, do you want to keep these display settings? We're going to hit keep changes, and that's it. Now, once you're in here, go over to the second display. That's going to be our handheld screen. Click on that and then look down at the resolution. It might be a little bit hard to see. Under the resolution, I can see that it's not showing 1080p by default, so I'm going to change it to that one. It's going to ask, you want to keep those? We're going to keep the changes, and that's it. Now we can change this to say 150% to make everything look a little bit easier here. Either way, at this point, that's all the configuration that you really have to do. You just have to make sure that Windows knows that when it connects to this particular device, it knows to go into 1080p with only this display showing, so it's not going to show on your host one. Either way, at this point, we are now properly configured with the device. So let's go ahead and back out and try it from the beginning as if we were just doing this for the very first time. So I'm going to swipe here from the left, which is going to bring up this quick menu. And now I can select quit session. That's going to then quit out of this and take us back to our regular menu. It'll take a minute, but after that, it'll quit out of the virtual desktop, and you can see that now we're back on our regular computer. So let's go ahead and close that out. And so now we've got basically our app running right now as well as Apollo. And so what we can do now, if we tap on Steam, it's going to make all that connection. It's going to turn off this display. It's going to show only on this one and also start up Steam Big Picture mode. And so now at this point, we are logged into the computer. I can stream and play any of the games that I have installed right here. Now, when starting up a game, let's look at some of these stats. So number one, you can see the video stream is running at 1080p, 120 frames per second. So that's going to be perfect for this device because that's exactly what the screen has here. And on the bottom, you can see the decoding time is under 1 millisecond. And that's pretty darn good considering the fact that my ROG Flow Z13, my host PC, is not plugged in via Ethernet to my network. So this is connected for Wi-Fi, and then this is connected via Wi-Fi as well. Either way, I'm now set up where I can stream my PC games over to my handheld from Apollo to Artemis, and so everything is working really nicely. Now, to exit out of your gameplay session, you can either swipe over from the left here and then bring up this menu, or you can also press select and start L1 and R1 at the same time. That will close your session as well. Just bear in mind that it's not going to actually quit out of anything. You can always just go right back to it. So this is an easy way to get back to the menu. If you want to actually quit it, then you can select the quit session. That's going to actually close it and then return your PC to its original state. Either way, that's how you set up streaming from Apollo to Artemis with an Android-based handheld. Okay, now let's say that you have multiple handhelds that you want to connect to the same host PC. There is one additional step that you need to do. So here's my Odin 3, and I'm going to connect it to my Flow Z13 for the first time. I'm going to tap on that. It's going to give me a pin of 9320. And so now what I'll do is I'll go over to the pin section here, and then under the pin pairing, again, I'm going to do 9320. I'm also going to give it a special name of Odin 3 and then hit send, and that's going to do the official pairing. So everything is paired nicely, but you will find that once you connect it, you can't actually use the handheld to control anything. So what you have to do for this is you have to go down here to device management, and you will see there's multiple devices, and for any additional device after the very first one, you have to go in over here and click on this little right icon. It's going to bring up a bunch of options and permissions that the device can have. And so by default, it's going to have the ability to list and view streams, but that's it. So you need to select the one that says launch apps. And then also, I just basically turn on everything, like the ability to do a controller input, a touch input, a pen input, mouse input, keyboard input. All those things are things that I want to do on my handheld. So I'm going to turn all of those on. Then I'm going to hit the green check mark right here. Again, you only have to do this one time per device, but everything after that first one will require this. From there, it's going to be the exact same flow like we just had. So I can tap on the virtual desktop here, and that's going to start up the connection. And again, first time it's going to actually show everything on both. So I have to go back into the view settings, then change it so it only shows on this one screen, and then make sure it's at 1080p as well. And then of course, after that, we are ready to go. So that's the only additional step, is that you have to add those additional permissions for the second and follow-on devices. Now let's say that you want to connect to the same PC, but with a different type of handheld, like the Steam Deck, something that's running a completely different operating system from Android. For these devices, we want to use Moonlight, since Artemis is only available on Android. And so let me show you how to install Moonlight on a Steam Deck and then other similar PCs like Bazzite and so on. So first thing you want to do is go into the main menu here, go into Power, and then select Switch to Desktop. Once you're in the desktop, you want to open up the Application Store, which is going to be right here on the bottom. And this is going to give you a list of different apps that you can install. So what we want to do here is search for the word Moonlight. The easiest way to do that is to press the Steam and X button to bring up your on-screen keyboard and then just type in the name. From there, it'll probably be the first name option, and it's going to have the same logo as Artemis, so it's just an easy tap on it here, and then you can just select Install. Once you have it installed, you'll see an option that says Launch right there, so let's tap on that to bring up the actual interface. And again, this is going to look a lot like Artemis. You can see I've got my Flow Z13 with a lock on it because we haven't paired it just yet. And of course, before we do that, let's tap on the settings icon and bring up the menu. The options are going to look a little bit different, but fundamentally they're the same. As you can see, you can change out your resolution and then your frame rate as well. For example, with the Steam Deck, I know it can go up to 90 frames per second because I have the OLED model. Now, the default video bitrate is 13 megabits per second. I think that's a little bit too low, so I'm going to go closer to something like 30, 32. Other than that, I wouldn't really mess with some of these default settings because they are set up pretty well as they are. So really, that's about all we have to do. We can then go back, and now we can actually pair it to the Flow Z13. The process here, again, is going to be identical to what we had before. So we're going to tap on it. It's going to give us a PIN number, which is 8532. Then I'm going to go into the device and actually type that in. And then once I've added that and I've given it a name, Steam Deck OLED, I can hit send and it's going to pair between the two, and now we should be good to go. From there, make sure that you give it all those permissions. So I went in already and I added all of them and hit the green check mark, and now we can actually connect to the virtual desktop. It's going to be the same thing where it's going to mirror your screen again. So we have to minimize that. Then we have to go into the display settings and then adjust it so it's only showing this one. So again, show only on 2, which is going to show just on this one. Then we're going to keep the changes. And then again, we're going to go back to the display, make sure it's showing the correct resolution, which for this one is 1280 by 800 for the Steam Deck. Hit OK. And then I can make this a little bit larger if I want, say 125%, and that's it. And so now again, we're back in the same position where I've got my Flow Z13 running on my Steam Deck, and I can exit out of this by pressing those buttons again. Now, once I've got this all configured and I'm happy with it, the next thing I want to do is make sure that I can access Moonlight from game mode within the Steam Deck or Bazzite. So I'm going to close out of the app here, and now I want to open up Steam. Once you're in Steam, you want to go down to Add a Game and then select Add a Non-Steam Game, and it'll give you a list of all the applications that are already installed. So this is pretty easy. Just scroll down till you find Moonlight and then click on that. Once you have that selected, you can do Add Selected Programs, and that's it. It's now been added. Now, if we exit out of this and return to gaming mode, you will see that it's going to be an option within our non-Steam games. So back on our Steam Deck here, I can go into the library and then go over to non-Steam, and then if I go under the letter M, I should see Moonlight. And so there we are, it's right here. We can also use things like Steam Grid DB to add box art to it and whatnot. But yes, now we can launch Moonlight directly from here, and it's going to take over our PC. And so this is a great solution if your PC is more powerful than the Steam Deck and you don't want to tax the device too much, but still be able to play some high-end games. Now let's talk about streaming on a cheaper retro handheld, one that's running a custom Linux firmware like this one right here, which is running Newly. Number one is that you need a device with Wi-Fi capability and connected to Wi-Fi. And then from there, you need something that's running a software that will allow you to run Portmaster. This will allow you to install Moonlight. I made a whole Portmaster video a while back. I'll leave it linked down below, so we're not going to go too far into it. But essentially, once you have Portmaster running, you'll want to go into Ready to Run Ports and then scroll all the way down until you find the letter M. From there, you're going to find an app called Moonlight New. Just go ahead and install this one, and then it'll show up on your main page. Once you refresh your device, if you go into the port section, you should see it right there. So now we can just launch into Moonlight directly. Now, getting this one set up is a little bit more involved. If we go over to the Connect section, we can see that it's actually asking for the IP address of our host device. So we need to grab that first. And the easiest way to get this on Windows is to go into your settings, then Network, and then go into Properties. Within here, if you scroll down, you will find your IPv4 address. This is a local IP, and just go and make note of that number, which in this case is 192.168, then 86.245. So now back on my device under IP address, I'm going to select that, and it's already got 192.168 here. So now I want to select 86 and 245. Once I've got that added, I can hit done, and now I can go over to pair and select that. It's going to give you an option with the pin, which is 7993 in this case. So now I'm going to go back and actually change that. And it's basically identical to what we had done before. So I can hit send here. It's now going to connect to the two, and now it's going to say that it's successfully paired. Same thing here again, we want to go into the settings here and then make sure that we're giving it all the permissions. So just go and click all of these and then do the green check mark, and that should be good on this end. Now in the app, there's a settings section, and within here, it has the ability to change things like the resolution and the bit rate and the frame rate. By default, it's going to show 480p, and the bit rate here is fine, and then same thing with the frame rate. So I think this is going to be okay, but you can adjust them if you need to. Now once you're connected, go back into the connect section here, and then there's an option on the right that says reload apps. Select that. It's going to reload the apps that you have stored within Apollo. Give that a second, and once it's done, you can press the A button to back out. Now go into play, and you should see all of your different options. So let's go now into the virtual display right here. And sure enough, just like before, I can now see the virtual display of this desktop. And so I'm going to go through here and go and adjust my video settings again so that I can play directly on this. Either way, as an example, yes, you can see that you can stream on this, and if you adjust the display resolution, you can get it to fit a 4:3 display, but not every game's going to support that. But, a couple other things that you could do that are kind of neat is that you could set this up to, for example, stream PS2 or GameCube games if you've got a device that maybe doesn't have enough power to do that, but you still want to play those games on this device. And so that's a way that you can do it, is just basically have it set up on your PC and then stream it over to your device as well. So when it comes down to it, we've got a lot of different options here depending on the device that you're trying to play. Now finally, let's talk about setting up Sunshine on other PCs just in case you don't have Apollo to set up. For example, you've got a living room PC that's running Bazzite or SteamOS, but you still want to run Sunshine. For this example, I'm going to use this Linux-based PC, which is called Playnix. I made a video about it last week talking about building my own Steam machine. So the idea here is that this can do all the heavy lifting of playing the game, but then I can stream it to a handheld, something a bit more lightweight. So here I am on my Playnix, and it's running Bazzite right now. So I'm going to press the escape button here, and much like with the Steam Deck, I'm going to go over here and then switch to desktop. Now my Bazzite desktop is GNOME, which is a little bit different of an interface compared to KDE, which is what most people use, but either way, it's going to be a pretty simple setup. We're going to go into the app grid here, or just go into your apps on the KDE side, then go into utilities. There'll be an option that says Bazzite Portal. And this is super simple. Just find the one that says Sunshine and then click on it. It's going to start the installation process. It's already here configured. It'll only show for a second, and then after that, if you go into your gaming utilities folder, you should see it right there already installed. Once you click on it, you should see in your tray icon, which will be at the top or the bottom depending on which environment you're using, you will see Sunshine. You can just select Open Sunshine, and this should be a very familiar interface. It'll say that there is a security risk. You can hit Advanced here, and then you can select Accept the risk and continue. And just like that, we are now in our Sunshine interface, which is identical to Apollo in many respects. So you'll make your username and password, and then you'll do the same thing as before, where you'll connect to different devices using a PIN and so on. If you want to get more into the weeds about running Sunshine on Bazzite, there's an excellent video tutorial that I'll leave linked down below, which will walk you through some of the more ins and outs here in terms of like auto login and things like that. I think it's a bit beyond the scope of this video, but yes, definitely possible. It's also worth noting that you can always manually install Sunshine as well. If you just go to their GitHub page, go into the releases, and you will see that there are a bunch of different options depending on the platform that you're using. And so this is where you can find things like the exe file if you're going to do it on Windows, the DMG file if you're going to do it on Mac, and so on. Either way, you've got a ton of options when it comes to connecting from your host PC over to your device. You can use either Apollo or Sunshine, and then of course Moonlight or Artemis. For my part, I prefer the Apollo Artemis connection just because it works really well on Windows, works really well on Android, and for the most part, if I'm going to be relaxing with a larger handheld device, it's generally going to be something that runs on Android anyway, like my Odin 3 or my Odin 2 Portal. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. I think that using streaming like this is a wonderful way to be able to play more heavy-duty games on a handheld that might not be able to play it on its own. This past week, I've been playing a lot of Pragmata. I think I'm about 3 or 4 hours in at this point, and yeah, I've been really enjoying this one. Sometimes I'll play it like on a full-on desktop experience, but other times I don't mind just kind of kicking back and playing it on the couch with a handheld instead. I think it's an excellent fit. Either way, I hope this guide was comprehensive and got you started in the world of game streaming. And as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you found this helpful, and we will see you next time. Happy gaming.